Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 337 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is Get Better Today. Our quote of the day comes to us from Pete Carroll. Stay hungry, remain humble, and get better today. Don't forget to subscribe to our show, and if you can, please leave us a 5-star review, as it really helps us get our show to a much wider audience. I remember watching our guest play in the major leagues, and it is an honor to have him join us today. I know you will get a ton from listening to Zach Sorensen share many of the things that he used during his professional baseball career, but also what he uses today with his clients, as he is one of the top mental performance coaches out there. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Zach, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thank you. We're so excited to be here, and hopefully we can enjoy this time together and make a difference.
I appreciate it. So following up with that, first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to positively impact at least one person today?
Oh, I love that. I love that question. I love the challenge, and I think that's an amazing goal for everybody. So yeah, let's do some impacting.
No, and I love that you said that because, people often talk about, especially on social media, of, I want to impact, billion or millions. And obviously that's an amazing goal to have. But think about if we each impacted one person and then we compound that over a week, a month, a year, we'd be in a different place, I think, than we are today.
Yeah, I love that. You think about the amount of touches you have throughout the day, and not just physical touches, but just connections you have with people. And I think if you have that mindset that I'm going to try to impact one person that may need something today, that's going to go such a long, long way. So yeah, I appreciate that. I love it. And challenge accepted in my life.
Challenge accepted. So the theme and the name of our show is No Quit Living. And I was curious if you yourself have either a no quit story or a challenging time where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Yeah, I think we all do. And it's interesting, you talk about my story, but immediately when you asked me that, I thought about people that surround me that are living that type of life right there. My mom has multiple sclerosis. She's had it for, we're pushing 40 years right now. And it's a daily no quit for her. It really is. And I'm so proud of her for what she's done in her life. And what's interesting, you talk about impacting people. When I stand back and I watch what she's done in her life, that's why I live my life the way I do, because of the way she lives her life, and, fortunately I get the chance to work with a lot of athletes at the elite level also. And we don't get to see this in elite athletes. We think that they're bulletproof, but, they're dealing with this no quit living as well. Whether it be pressure, whether it be frustration, whether it be injury, whatever it may be, they have to do the same things that you're talking about right now, where it's wake up in the morning, we're going to get after it, we're going to make it happen. And that's the no quit living in my perspective.
I love that. And I'm glad that you shared that perspective as a former Major League Baseball player, but working with elite athletes. I think we all see these athletes on TV or social media, and we see this persona of perfection and bulletproof, like you said. And the reality is they have family, kids, issues, maybe family members are sick, what have you. But we expect them to be, perfect. And I think that's so far from the truth, because just because you're a professional fill in the blank doesn't mean that you don't have all the other stuff going on behind you. But I think from a fan's perspective, it's like, well, that's great that Zach's got kids and, a wife and all that jazz, but he still needs to, play baseball today. And, he has to just put that to the side. And I always challenge people, because we also work with some sports teams, but, it's like, imagine someone coming into your office and just, expecting you to be perfect and have an amazing day. And I always think it's interesting saying, well, what if you were on TV all the time? Would you think that your parents and your, significant others would always want everything that you're doing to be shown, live and up front?
Yeah, that's such an interesting perspective, and probably one that we don't want to think about, right? Because that could be dangerous if we were totally transparent and vulnerable in that situation scenario. But we kind of put them on that pedestal, and that kind of adds to the pressure that they have to deal with just when it comes to performing is the social pressures and how we view them, because it's real. and it happens. And I was talking to a player the other day, and I said, overcoming obstacles is something that we talk about a lot in this world that we talk about with mental performance. But what's interesting, whether it be for a professional athlete, for myself and my family, my kids, or whoever it is that we're talking to, is our goal is to attack and climb a mountain. Okay, we have mountains in front of us. We're going to climb, we're going to attack, and we're going to achieve. But what's the interesting perspective is after you get to the top of the mountain, guess what? There's just another mountain. Okay, so it's not like it's over. It's just there's another mountain. But what you have to understand is the perspective you gained, the experience you were able to gather from climbing that mountain number one is what's going to make you stronger as you go climb mountain number two. And you got to remember that. Okay, it's about experience. It's about gathering information. It's about polishing your set of skills. And because you go through experiences, you get stronger.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but I know so many people have shared that success or the ultimate success, who or what you get at that point, per your example, the mountain top, it's who you become along the way. Yes, it's nice to have that trophy or that financial reward, but so many people, and like I said, I'm not even going to attempt to recreate the quotes, but there's so many that talk about the journey and who you become and what you become during those difficult times. But I like how you said when you get to the top of the mountain, it's great, but then all of a sudden look to the left or right and you're like, there's a bunch of other mountains I have to go out and climb.
Absolutely, but that's exciting too, right? That's why we keep pushing. We keep pushing the rock is because we love to work in progress, and maybe this is something we touch on real quick, because you talked about being perfect. You talked about the image of a professional athlete is that they're perfect, and when I work with my athletes, I think that they feel that. They recognize that, they feel that, and that's hard to have that expectation of yourself. It's hard to have that expectation of our own athletes if we're coaches, and it's hard to have that expectation of our children, okay, as we parent them. And they feel that for sure. And so when I'm working with my guys, I try to back off on that because I always ask them, is it possible to be perfect? And I think we all understand the answer is no. So when we start focusing on things that we can't become or things that we can't control, like, what happens? They start controlling you and you actually become out of control. And it's interesting. And you're doing it right now. Whenever I say, when you focus on things you can't control, they control you and you become out of control. Everybody nods their head, right? Because we know what that feels like. Now, for you, it feels totally different than what I'm thinking in my mind, but we all understand what it feels like to be out of control. That's a result of focusing on things you can't control. And so when I start breaking this down for my athletes, I start saying, okay, if you can't control if you're the best, or you can't control if you're perfect, and you can't even control if you're good enough, okay, because that's based on who's asking the question, well, then what can you control? And my goal, my challenge to my athletes is we're going to focus on getting a little bit better every single day. And when I asked them, I said, can you get a little bit better every single day? Every single person with authority nods their head and says, yes, I can. So for me, there's a little nugget on what we attack that, the athletes I get to work with, my children, myself, it doesn't matter where I'm at right now in my walk with whatever it is that I'm talking about. The only thing that matters is I'm focusing on getting a little bit better every single day.
I think we could probably end the podcast right there with a mic drop. That was awesome. And I touch a bit on a lot of the speaking I do and coaching I do. What you just said is control the controllables, and I think it's not this idea of right or wrong, but we all focus too much on those things that we don't have control over. And I just love how you touched on that. And we're going to get into your book in a second, but a fun question I ask each guest is if you had to define yourself, but you could only pick one word, what word would you pick?
Ooh, that is an awesome question. The word that popped into my mind is driven, and I like that word. But for me, it is progress. And here's what I mean by that. So I believe that we all, and I believe that I am a work in progress. Okay. Sometimes that work in progress, it doesn't look too good. Okay. But I am a work in progress. And along with that, I also challenge myself to work in progress. And so progress is such a big word in my life because I'm always pushing to, again, like we mentioned earlier, I'm always pushing to get a little bit better. So progress is the word that I try to define my life around. And I hope that I'm being that day in and day out.
I think that goes really, really well with what you said before is just getting a little bit better every day. And I think when you break it down, and I know you've seen it, you've probably used it at some point, if not been told as a professional athlete, 1% better today. And it's the same concept of, getting a little bit better today. And it's progress is, did I make an improvement today? Did I learn something today? Did I, be a better this? Did I try to do a little bit more here? And I think that's the inaccuracy, I believe, of social media, where we're all looking at, people's best of their best. It's like looking at an all-star in any sport when it's your first day, and you're like, well, that person's amazing, and you say, yeah, you should try to emulate their success, but you shouldn't compare their 12 years playing at the highest peak for your 12 minutes. And I think I'm guilty of that myself, is you look at that, but when you break it down, how you said, it's progress. And I think it's such a powerful word, but it's, I think, such a simplistic word when you look at it, that people just completely like, oh yeah, we got to make progress. But if you break it down, that's what success is, at those small little wins each and every day, and you compound it over a month, over a baseball season. All of a sudden, your team's in the playoffs because you had progress along the way. It's not where you start, it's where you finish.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, and maybe we can even break it down a little bit more, because that's how I like to coach and that's how I like to teach. So I was asked an interesting question the other day by someone who knows my son real well and works with him. And my son struggles with this belief system. Okay. And that's one reason I dove into mental performance, because I want to help him. And they said, how does he develop confidence? Okay. And I think that's something you can all ask yourselves, is where do you get confidence from? Because you'll probably agree with me. That's the number one question I get asked. Okay. How can I help my child, my son, my athlete, my team with confidence? And I think we're under the understanding that we get confidence from success. And I think we all can say, yes, you do. But my next question is what if you don't get the success that you want? Does that mean you're not going to be a confident person? And the answer to that is that's not good enough. And so we as coaches need to find a way, or we as individuals in our own life need to find a way to create confidence, even if we don't get success. So think about that. How do you do that? And for me, it goes back to what you just mentioned. It is, we have to attack progress by focusing on getting 1% better. So I'll share a quick story with you. I was working with the Texas Rangers a couple years ago. I'm down with the guys in spring training. I'm talking to them, and I'm like, your job is to work on getting a little bit better every single day. And it was hurrah. It was, this and that, rah, rah, rah. And I fly out of town. Well, I fly back in a week later, and I'm like, did you guys get better this week? And everybody's like, yeah. And I'm like, how do you know? And the room went quiet, because it's exactly what you said. We all agree. Yeah, we want to get a little bit better every single day. And my job as a coach is to give you drills to do so that you can accomplish the things you want to accomplish. I didn't give them drills that first week. So when I went back down there and I asked them, how do you know? And finally someone raised their hand. They said, well, we worked hard. And I'm like, absolutely. Work ethic, we can't do anything without work ethic. If you don't have work ethic, you will not succeed. You will not accomplish. Right. And so I agreed with him. I said, but how do you know you got better, even though you worked hard? Room went quiet. And I said, that's my job as your coach, is to teach you how to do something like that. And that's where I implemented what you mentioned before, is the 1% better concept. But I wanted to break it down for them even more. So 1% of your day is, and some of you know this that are listening, it's 14 minutes and 24 seconds. And so when I show up to a team, so I have the chance to work with all of the affiliates for the Atlanta Braves right now. I'm their mental performance coach, and I'll show up to the AA team, and then next week I'll go see the A-ball team, and this and that. I'm bouncing around. So it can be 4 or 5, 6 weeks before I see teams. The first question I ask when I bump into a player is not, how are you doing? How are you feeling? It is, what is your 1424? And so I've tried to implement this, what is your 1424? And here's why I make such a big deal about that, is I want to create victory in my life. So going back to the question that was asked about my son, how does he become a confident person? We create victory in his life. Well, how do you create victory? Well, you build into your routine things that you can accomplish day in and day out, and you stack those wins. And because you're stacking those wins, guess what's happening as a result? You're becoming a more confident person. You can plan for confidence. You can build confidence by programming confidence into your day. And the way I do it is by attacking a 1424. So I'll go to my players and I say, okay, we break down our game last night. What'd you do well? What do you want to do better? And how are you going to do it? And then right next to how are you going to do it, I say, what is your 1424? So based on yesterday, okay, based on the evaluation of the day that you just had, you're going to have things that you struggled with. And that's the better part. What do I want to do better? Well, things were exposed. And when things are exposed that you're weak at, right, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a second, I struggled with that today. So tomorrow I'm going to attack that in my 1424. And guess what we see? We see progress. we see growth. And when you have progress and you have growth, you will become confident. And so, that's one of the biggest triggers I try to get my guys to attack with is I want to give them a drill that they can do that will create these wins, which ultimately, hopefully, will build belief system.
I love that. There's like 15 different things we could go off on, literally 15 different tangents. But I love how you shared or you said that stack the wins, and I think it's something I talk about. And being a sports guy yourself, and me being a former sports player and coach myself prior to getting to this space, I always give the analogy that a championship season is not awarded in game one or in inning one or quarter one of the season. And people laugh and they nod their head, but the reality is it's you have to stack those wins. You have to get the first win, and you have to get the first win on the road, and then the first 2 or 3 game winning streak, and then first win after a loss, and you add those things together, and to use your analogy before, you stack them. Now all of a sudden you're playing for a championship or you're in the playoffs. And I think, again, going back to what I said before, it's we look at people's highlight reel and we look at social media, and people are sharing their best, but they often don't share. I don't think most people share enough of what they did along the way. And for me, I love the people on social media or the people in general that are vulnerable, and they share, this is what I did, and hey, these are the times I fell down, but I learned and I got up and I was stronger and faster. So wanted to segue that into your book, which I had the opportunity to read, which I thought was fantastic. I guess an interesting question, but a fun question, is if there was one takeaway that you wanted each reader to get, could you define it as one thing you really want each reader to take from the book, or is it more of a, 50 things? But I always like to ask that because sometimes you get some really cool answers from authors.
Yeah, that is a cool answer. And, so my book is built around 7 skills of mental performance. And in the book, I talk about how I kind of came up with the skills as well as the drills based on my career as a player. So you're going to get instruction. You're going to get structure on mental performance training. You're also going to get some fun and funny stories. But I think what's interesting, some of the feedback I've got on the book is right out of the gate in the introduction, I become vulnerable with you. And I talk about how, as a player, and this is the back end of my career. So I had the opportunity to play 10 years professionally, 2 years, parts of 2 years up in the big leagues, but 10 years professionally. And I want to say it was like year 8. I go out there and I'm playing shortstop, and the first baseman in between innings while the pitcher's getting loose is rolling you ground balls. And I've done this probably 100,000 times in my life. He rolls me a ground ball. I pick it up to throw it back to him, and I airmail it over his head. And that's happened a lot too. Okay, so I don't want for a minute to think that doesn't happen, but it's happened a lot. But that day was different because it was Little League Day at the ballpark, and so the stands were just full of tons of kids. And I remember watching the flight of that ball, and it was in slow motion for me. And luckily for me, it just missed hitting a young fan in the head. And I remember it's like, okay, shake it off, no big deal, right? I go out there, he rolls me another ground ball, and I pull up short that time, and I throw him like a 3-hopper. And then the next one, I'm like, well, should I throw it harder? Well, I don't want to hit a kid. Do I throw it? No, I can't. So all of a sudden, I have this mind problem. And so I kind of go through and tell you the story and this and that. Well, the next day, someone reads the book, or a couple weeks later, someone reads the book, and they're like, "Man, you really took a risk by talking about that. You're this professional athlete. We look up to you. It's like we were talking about earlier. This perfection concept that we have of these professional athletes." And he's like, "When you share that struggle you had, are you afraid you're going to lose readers because they're like, oh, I can't listen to this guy. Look, he struggles." And so I talked about vulnerability. And I'm like, when I work with athletes, the sooner I can get them to be vulnerable with me, the better chance we have of progressing quicker.
Mm.
And that's my goal is, can I establish trust with my athletes or my kids? Because as soon as we establish trust and we become vulnerable, then we can get better. Interesting finish to that story is 2 days later, I get another person who comes up and is like, "Oh, I read your book. I'm on chapter 3, this and that." And he's like, "The introduction." I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go again." And he was a former professional baseball player. And he goes, "It was so refreshing to read that you were out there saying, 'Please don't hit me the ball,' because that's how I felt as a player." And immediately when I read that, I was like, okay, I can read this book because I've been through similar struggles. So I tried to be vulnerable in it. I tried to share some things that hopefully can hit home that you can relate to as a reader, because for me, that's how we learn. We learn by by learning from others. We learn by going through struggle. We learn because we aren't afraid to make mistakes and to grow from them.
I wasn't sure where you're going to go with that question. It's kind of a open ended question, but just pinpointing and just to reiterate what you said, the vulnerability piece. I think that's what puts a reader, in my opinion, into the idea of the author saying, okay, now I can understand where he or she's coming from. And using your analogy of professional athletes, I think it's so overlooked because it's okay, this person, he or she is the best of the best. So they should never make a mistake. They should never have an off day. They should never use you as an example, have a bad throw. Yeah, you're a professional baseball player, so every throw should be perfect and every ground ball should be fielded perfectly. And no, it's not. It's the statistics. The numbers are much higher that you do it at a higher rate and a better rate, and obviously you throw more accurately. But it's the fact that nobody's perfect, and I think that's the interesting perspective when you use vulnerability. And I can't speak for being a former baseball player, but I could say that if you're coming into work with my team and I'm a player and you're sharing some of the challenges you had, I know for a fact in my life when people do that to me, I'm open. I say, oh, wow, that's interesting. And some people that have coached me along the way in podcasting, speaking, and having written my first book last year, it was awesome because they shared a bunch of good, a bunch of bad. I always ask the question, what would you do differently and what would you repeat? And I think that's a great question because people will tell you, well, I did this well, I would definitely do that again. But they also say, well, these are two areas that I completely fumbled and I definitely would have done differently. Fun question maybe for you, but maybe also a selfish question for me is who's your favorite or who was your favorite teammate of all time?
Oh, that's awesome. One of the funnest guys I had a chance to play with was Manny Ramirez, and ultra competitor, super fun. And I think that one of the reasons why I loved being around Manny is because I learned so much from him, and he was able to share with me so many things. Um, and I talk about a lot of those in the book. I talk about a lot of those in my training that I do with my players and my athletes. But an individual who had very high self awareness, okay, which is very important, and someone who put in the work, but did it in a way that made himself the most successful possible player he could become. So, but that's a tough question because I was able to surround myself with so many good people, and I was that player. I probably drove them crazy. I was asking the question why all the time to all of my guys. So whether it be Roberto Alomar, I'd be like, "Why did you swing at that pitch?" He's like, "Well, I got a base out." Yeah, but why did you swing at that one and not the one before? So I was a firm believer in I need to ask the question why because I need to gather information. And so just an awesome opportunity to play with guys, Dave Roberts, CC Sabathia, Jim Tomey, I talk about a lot in the book. uh, Probably one of my greatest influences from the coaching standpoint was Eric Wedge, and Eric was my manager along the way, and he's managed in the big leagues quite a bit, but taught me so many things about mental performance. And unfortunately, and I use this story real quick to tell a quick lesson here is as a minor league baseball player, you make limited money. Okay. In fact, you make next to nothing. All right. To just throw it out there. So when you go watch those minor league players, playing ball, they're not making hardly any money whatsoever. The higher up you get in professional baseball, obviously, the more money you make. And then you make it to the big leagues and it's wide open for you there. The same thing's true for like gear that you get. Okay. As a young minor league player, I usually had to buy my own gear. Now I had some contracts, but I have to buy out my batting gloves and I got to buy my bats and this and that. You get to the big leagues and all these companies want you to use their stuff. Okay. So you come home from a road trip and there's 50 boxes on your chair and you got Adidas, you got Nike, you got all these guys that want you to use their stuff. The same was true for me for knowledge about how to act as a baseball player or professional athlete. And that's so interesting. But what I learned is the higher up you get in the game or the higher up you get in life, the people that live at that level they have this growth mindset that we talk about in mental performance all the time. They want to push themselves to get better day in and day out. And the humility is there, even though they're these elite athletes and they're constantly learning. And if I could challenge any of the young athletes that may be listening to this or anyone I have a chance to work with, it is you want to follow suit and always watch and always ask questions because the people that have been there, I mean, success leaves clues. We talk about that all the time. So let's go after that. Why do you have the success that you have? Tell me about it. And immediately I'm going to implement that into my routine.
I love that. And I was literally about to say success leaves clues. And I think so many people don't take advantage of. And I know for a fact when I was coaching college basketball at an early point, I went to as many coaching clinics that I could. And you and I probably would have been good teammates because we probably been asking each other questions literally all day. And people would have been like, all right, the two of you need to either just shut up or go in your own dugout because you need to stop talking for a little bit. But that's how you get better is asking questions. And I think in today's day and age, people don't ask enough questions. And I'm not talking about just, any and all questions about nonsense, but I'm talking about from your point of view, asking one of the greatest hitters, Roberto Alomar, why he swung at that pitch as opposed to another one. It's obviously for a reason. He wasn't as amazing as he was at the plate because he just took chances and just swung whenever it was. I thought this was coming. I figured maybe a fastball was coming next, so that's why I didn't swing in the prior pitch. But I think the ability to ask questions is something that we all have, and I think in today's day and age with technology, people don't take enough advantage of it where you can connect people in a genuine way first and foremost. But I've found, and I'm curious to get your perspective, most successful people from all different walks of life have had multiple people that have helped them along the way. And I think the ones that are really successful and they know that they have had multiple mentors along the way, they're eager to give the information back to people that want to learn it. And I'm curious if you agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our mutual friends and mentors, that we talk about all the time is Brian Kane. And so Brian Kane is his whole tagline is dominate the day, right? We all know that, but he goes out there and he dominates his days every single day. And so he shows us what it looks like. But one thing I've been way impressed with when it comes to him is he has all of this gathered information that he's put together over the last 20 years of mental performance training. And what does he do with that information? He gives it away. He gives it away to everybody. And I think when you can get to that point as a coach, where if you pick up on something that's impacted your life and you want to share that with everybody, okay, then you've become a real coach. Why? Because you have empathy for other people and you want to help them to become better. So that's like next level mental performance training. Okay, your goal as an athlete is to continually live in that growth mindset to where you're going to get better every single day. Next level is you're going to help other people get better every single day. And I think that's why you and I both are so passionate about what we do. Because the reward isn't that we look good. The reward is that the individuals that we have a chance to touch every single day through training or whatever it may be, they can find a way to get a little bit better every single day. And that's where I get so excited about what I get to do, because if I can help somebody else become better, guess what that does for me? I mean, yeah, it helps me, but the focus isn't on us. The focus is on it's them. It's what can I do to help you? And it goes back to the first thing you talked about on this show.
I was about to say it reiterates what we said before is that one person. But I think to your point and just touching on Brian for a second, he's an unbelievable guy. He's helped me in so many ways, his coaching program, but the whole mental performance perspective, I think in today's year of 2021, I think it's very different than it was even when you were playing. It was still there. I think things have and will continue to be called different things. But I think the focus right now, going back to what we touched on, is controlling the controllables. I had never heard of that as a college athlete, high school athlete. I knew what it was. I think conceptually is okay. I can't control if this umpire makes a terrible call. In the basketball court, I can't control if another guy hits a shot or doesn't make the shot. But we didn't say it that way. And today's day and age, the mental performance piece, I think, is so important because that's something that you and I can control. I'm not going to be able to throw a 100-mile-an-hour fastball tomorrow morning. If I was, you and I think, would be having a very different conversation where I'd probably be asking for some baseball contacts. But if I was an athlete or in a classroom or in a meeting room, I can control my mind. I can control my preparation. I can control my awareness, my readiness. So I'm really glad you touched a bunch on that mental performance stuff because I think it's so powerful, but I don't think enough people know about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you did mention that when I was coming up through the minor leagues or even in Major League Baseball, we had mental performance coaches, and I think it would be fair to call them sports psychologists, okay, on staff. And the reason why I make a difference there, because to me there is a difference. I have a master's in sports psychology. I call myself a mental performance coach, and here's why I make a big deal about that. When I show up to the ballpark, Or when I get hired by a team, I ask them if I can have a uniform, and some of them scratch their head at that. And here's why. Now, baseball coaches are weird. I think we're the only sport out there where the coaches actually wear the same gear.
It is the only sport. We've had a conversation. Yeah, it is 100%.
100%. So, and my wife was talking to me about that, and I'm like, no, I really think that basketball coaches should be wearing the same gear as the players or football coaches, right? So, anyway, a different topic. But here's why I make a big deal about that is when you come talk to a mental performance coach, you're not going to them because you're weak. Okay. And that's a big deal for me. And I think that's what we're trying to change right here. Are you going to have weak moments and you want to go talk to your mental performance coach? Absolutely. And we will be there for those moments. But we are a coach. And here's why I make a big deal about that, because just like you go to the strength coach to get stronger or the speed coach to get faster, you're going to come to your mental performance coach because you want to become more mentally tough. And we can help you build that into who you are. So, the book, I titled my book, The Hard 90. And the reason why I titled it The Hard 90 is I go around all over the country and speak to people, and I'm like, what percentage of the game is mental? And I'm not just talking baseball. I'm talking any sport. I'm talking life. And everybody says 90%. All right. So it's the hard 90, because the question I ask after that is, okay, it's 90% of your game. What percent of your day are you training the mental game? And the answer is, I'm not. Okay. So it's the 90% of the game that we do less than 10% of the time. And so what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to help my athletes realize that this is a part of the game that you can train. And my goal is to give you something to go to when you need something to go to. Okay, so 6 months from now, you may get into a situation where you are struggling out there in your performance, whatever it may be, on the court, on the field, wherever it may be. Now, when you get to that point where you are struggling, what are you going to do about it? If you haven't trained the mental game, basically what happens is you just hope that you can get through that situation. And I love hope. It's a word that I love to talk about. I have it, okay? But at an elite level, just hoping you're going to be successful probably isn't going to get the job done. So wouldn't it be powerful if you knew exactly what you're going to go to when things get tough? That's mental performance training as far as my perspective is concerned. So when my players get out there, and in baseball, they cruise through innings 1, 2, and 3, they get into the fourth inning, they walk the first guy on 4 pitches, they hit the next guy in the back, okay, and the next guy hits a double. Now what? Okay. And for me, that's what mental performance training is we're going to be able to give you something to go to when you need something to go to. And that is the moment where you need it. So you will never fall below the level of your preparation or your training. So where is your training? And again, I get excited talking about this. I know you do as well, but that's why I am excited, because when I was a player and things got hard, I wasn't sure what to do, and I needed more. And so, boom, the master's program, Brian Kane, individuals like yourself who I have a chance to learn from day in and day out. I'm so excited to share this information with athletes, with parents, and coaches, so that we can be ready for those moments before they hit.
I loved how you just shared that, is being ready for the moments. And I think how you began that last statement was, you don't look for a mental performance coach or a sports psychologist because you are weak. It's not because of a weakness. It's because that person wants to get better. And I think what you just said, you hit it on the completely on the nail, is if and when those situations and opportunities come a week, a month, 2 months from now, because you've trained yourself both physically but also mentally, you're going to put yourself into a much better chance of succeeding. Now, it doesn't mean, obviously, everybody that you work with and I work with are undefeated and never make mistakes, but I firmly believe if you train and prepare yourself, you're going to put yourself into such a higher chance of succeeding. So I appreciate that. We're going to switch lanes into what I call our hot seat questions, and the only request I have of you is you spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Gotcha. Yeah, this is hard for me. I usually have to think things through and process, but here we go.
They'll be easy, I promise. Last meal, you can pick absolutely anything. What do you pick?
The last meal I'm going to have, I'm a chicken broccoli guy. Boring, but I'm a chicken broccoli guy.
I can say I've asked that question so many times, and you are the first chicken and broccoli guy.
Right.
Favorite smell?
Ooh, favorite smell? Ballpark.
I was just about to say baseball. Other than baseball, what is your favorite sport?
I love watching football. I really do. I enjoy watching football.
Do you have an all-time favorite team?
I would have to say that the Anaheim Angels, my favorite team.
Favorite movie?
Ooh, good one. Favorite movie is a small budget film called Forever Strong. It's a rugby movie that I would recommend to everybody. Forever Strong. You'll get a lot of mental performance training in that thing.
Is it a
For
new movie?
No, it's an old movie. I went to Highland High School in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the coach that was there, I mean, his overall record in his career is like 650 and like seven. And my younger brother had a chance to play for him. And if you're a coach, you're going to get a lot of nuggets out of that thing right there. And a parent. I mean, I try to parent like he coaches.
That's awesome. Do you have an all-time favorite book?
I go back to Win Forever a lot by Pete Carroll. I know that's one we see, but it's a simple, easy read. Also, Chop Wood, Carry Water is one that talks about the process a lot, and I really am a process guy, a routine guy, so I like those.
I read Chop Wood, Carry Water the first time this year. Fantastic
Yeah.
book. Do you have a favorite app you use on your phone?
Brian Kane's got me going on the Way of Life app a lot, and that's going to track. You guys can dive into that and learn about it, but it's going to track your routine, and that's how I stack my wins every day and hold myself accountable.
What is the background picture on your phone?
The background picture on my phone is my wife and three daughters.
Do you have an all-time favorite quote?
Oh, interesting. I'm in a dad joke mode with my kids, so that's what's coming to mind. But all-time favorite quote is I used to have written down, "The harder you work, the luckier you get." That's one that came to my mind. So I'll have to think about that one. Get back to you on that one.
What is that one song, no matter whenever you hear it, you automatically turn up the radio or the car and just rock out?
I think that for our family, "Don't Stop Believing," of course, from Journey pops up a lot, and everyone turns that one up.
That's awesome. Jim Rohn has a favorite quote that I know you know. You are the average of the five people you spend the most time with. If I had the opportunity to grant you dinner with any five people, dead or alive, that you could level up from, who would you pick?
Oh, that's impressive. I think that I could put on people on there. I talk about this a lot. You become the average of the five people you spend the most time with. Dr. Rob Gilbert, which we all know I consider him one of my top five because I listen to him and I talk to him every single day. I've never met him. Okay. I think we need to have Brian Kane in that mix right there. Joe Madden, manager Joe Madden of the Anaheim Angels, is a big mental game guy that needs to be in there. Jackie Robinson would be on that list for me for many, many, many reasons because of who he had to become. And I have my wife with me everywhere I go. And so she needs to be in that group as well because she keeps me kind of balanced. She keeps me neutral thinking.
She keeps you grounded. And then
That's
for
it.
our listeners, what's the best way for them to connect with you, follow you, but also where can they find your book? Because I think it is a fantastic book and it's a quick read. And I don't mean that in a simplistic
Yeah.
form, but I mean it's a book that you get into and it goes by very quickly because of the content.
My social is at ZSorensen4, and that's ZSORENSEN4 on the social platforms. Website, which we're working on make happen, thehard90.com will direct you to zsorensen.com. So either one of those will get you there as we build things up. And then my book is The Hard 90, How to Prepare, Compete, and Progress in the Mental Game. And I got this right here. I'll show you. The Hard 90, How to Prepare, Compete, and Progress in the Mental Game. It's on Amazon. That's where I get it. And you can make that happen from there. And then also I'll throw in there, I just started for my athletes. I want to find a way to connect with my athletes each time. So I'm a firm believer in doing a little bit a lot. Okay. You have to do a little bit a lot. And as I thought about that concept that I teach day in and day out, how do I help them with that? And so, of course, I talked about the 1424. And I try to help my athletes with doing a little bit a lot. So I created a podcast myself. It's the Hard 90 podcast with Zach Sorensen. It's on, podcasts as well as on Spotify. I'm going to give you about my goal is 4 minutes and 24 seconds. I'm going to give you just a little bit a lot. So 5 days a week, you can get a little bit of messaging about mental performance training from me on that podcast as well. So
That is awesome. I appreciate that. And then last question we have for you is if you have any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
yeah, I love that. And I think, from what we talked about today, the thing that keeps coming up that we talked about quite a bit is you are a work in progress. And that's a good thing. Okay. So we don't care where you're at all. It doesn't matter to me where you are in your walk, in your struggles, in your life, no matter what it is. You are a work in progress. And my challenge to you is to work in progress. Get a little bit better every single day. And just, if you can attack life that way, I can't even imagine where you will be in 6 months, 12 months, 5 years from now.
I love that. And I think that's a fantastic way to end today's episode. And I definitely recommend our listeners to get a copy of your book, but also follow you as well. And I hope that you and I can connect again soon.
Love it. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to episode number 337. Zach referenced the idea of getting better each day. I love how he touched upon that he is a firm believer in doing a little bit, a lot. In his parting words, Zach shared how we are all a work in progress, and I could not agree more. So I'd like to challenge each of you to not look at where you are right at this moment or focus on where you started. Instead, I challenge you to fully grasp and embrace the idea of being a true work in progress and look at where you want to be and where you want to go and take one step in that direction today. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.